The wine in my glass caught the light like garnet. Deep, rich, expensive. Evan had ordered the bottle with a confidence that always bordered on arrogance. His hand grazed the stem of his own glass, more invested in the way it looked in his grip than the taste itself. Across the long mahogany table sat his colleagues, all in shades of blue and charcoal, laughing about quarterly projections, like it was some private joke I'd never be invited to understand. I smiled anyway. That was my role. Silent adornment, polite nods, lipstick that didn't smudge on the glass. I wore the cream silk dress Evan had picked out last Christmas, the one he said made me look put together. It clung to my waist like a memory of a woman I used to be, tailored, quiet, careful. The chatter shifted suddenly, like air thickening before a storm. One of the junior execs whispered, "She's here," and a subtle hush spread over the table like spilled water. I followed their eyes to the entrance of the private dining room, tall, confident, with sharp heels and sharper eyes. The woman walked in like she owned the place. Her presence pulled the oxygen out of the room. This was the mysterious client, the one whose company had doubled in valuation in under a year. The one Evan's team had been desperate to win over. But she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at me, and then she smiled. "Oh my God," she said, striding past Evan like he didn't exist. "Is that you, Lila Monroe?" I stood, more from instinct than intention. "Rachel." My voice trembled. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year. Just emails, late-night calls, brainstorming sessions over Google Docs. We'd built her brand. From scratch. Just the two of us. She hugged me like an old friend, then held me at arm's length. "You're the reason my company even exists. You have no idea what you did for me." I laughed, stunned. "I just helped you find your voice. You did the rest." She turned to the table. "This woman is a genius," she said. "She helped me go from 0 to 6 figures in 3 months. I owe everything to her." The silence was sharp. Forks hovered mid-air. Evan's face didn't move at first, like he couldn't compute what was happening. And then it did. A slow twitch at the corner of his mouth, like his pride was cracking open. When she left, to greet someone from the bar, the table erupted in awkward clinks and forced smiles. Evan leaned toward me, voice low and clipped. "You didn't think to mention you were working with her?" I blinked. "You never asked." "It's just weird," he muttered. "I mean, your little hobby got lucky, that's all." There. It was. That word, hobby. I folded my napkin slowly, buying time before I spoke. "You know I've been building my business. You've seen the orders, the reviews. Etsy isn't a business, Lila. It's crafts. It's cute. But this is serious work." I looked around the table. Half the men were pretending not to listen. The other half were clearly enjoying the show. "I didn't realize helping launch a multi-million-dollar brand was crafts," I said quietly. He scoffed. "You got lucky with one client. Don't let it go to your head." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My voice had curled inward like a wounded animal. I spent the rest of the dinner tracing the condensation on my glass, every laugh and clink like a hammer against my skull. When we got home, I didn't even take off my heels. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Evan was already in the closet, pulling off his tie like he was shedding the weight of me. "You embarrassed me tonight," he called out. I turned slowly. "By existing?" "No, by making me look like I didn't know what was going on. That woman, your client, she made it sound like you're some guru." I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I would cry. "Maybe I am," I said softly. He froze. What did you say? Maybe I am a guru. Maybe I'm finally good at something. His eyes darkened. You've always been good. At being a wife. At holding things together. I'm tired of holding things together, I said, standing up. The room felt smaller now. Or maybe I was finally taking up space. There was a long silence. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. And maybe I had. I had never once stood tall in front of him. Not really. I reached for the bottle of perfume on my dresser, rose and cedarwood, a scent I used to wear when I still felt like a woman with edges. I sprayed it onto my wrists, the aroma like a pulse of memory. I am still here, it whispered. You think this is going to make you powerful? He sneered. No, I said. I think it just reminded me that I already am. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the slow tick of the clock, my heart beating in sync. Something had been born at that dinner table, or maybe something had died. Either way, nothing would be the same. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. 6 years ago, I stood barefoot in our new apartment, still half filled with boxes, holding a paint swatch in one hand and a promise in the other. 1 year, Evan had said, his arms around my waist. Just 1 year while I get this position settled. Then we'll talk about your business, okay? He kissed my forehead like a seal of fate, and I believed him. Back then, I believed everything he said. I thought compromise was love. I thought being a good wife meant folding myself into the shape of his ambition. The apartment smelled like new carpet and possibility. I let go of my lease in Boston, closed the chapter on my career in creative branding, clients I loved, a team I helped build, and followed Evan to this city, into a world where my last name mattered more than my ideas. The first 6 months blurred into dinner parties and dry cleaning tags. I became fluent in the art of listening without speaking, smiling without substance. Evan's boss loved me because I made a mean lemon tart and knew when to leave the room. I kept myself busy nesting, organizing the linen closet, alphabetizing our spice rack, finding the perfect shade of taupe for the bathroom. And then, when the silence became too loud, I started drawing again. Late at night, while Evan snored beside me, I sketched planner layouts and journal pages. One evening I whispered, I think I want to sell them. He didn't look up from his laptop. Sell? What? My planner designs. I could open a little Etsy shop. His laugh was short. Cute. I smiled, pretending it was a compliment, but something in my chest pinched. I called the shop Order and Grace, a nod to the woman I was trying to be. Organized, graceful, not bitter. It was slow at first, a few digital downloads here and there, but the messages that came in, they mattered. Women wrote about how my pages helped them through messy divorces, job losses, postpartum fog. Somehow, we were healing each other through paper. Evan never asked about the shop again. He only noticed when I spent too long at the desk, or when I didn't hear him call for water. I miss the days you used to bake, he said one night, watching me proofread a printable. You used to be softer. Softer. As if softness was synonymous with silence. Still, I tried. I made lemon tarts again, wore the perfume he liked, hosted company dinners, laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I remember one night vividly. We were at a rooftop bar with some of his colleagues. The city lights shimmered like a distant promise. I'd mentioned a new planner bundle I was releasing, something I'd worked on for weeks. Evan cut me off. She's got a little artsy side hustle, he said, chuckling. Keeps her entertained while I bring home the real income. They laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I shrank a little more. When we got home, I sat at my desk and stared at my laptop screen, the cursor blinking like a pulse. I wanted to scream. Instead, I opened my inbox and found a message from a woman named Rachel Cartwright. She wrote, "I love your designs. I'm starting a wellness brand and could really use help shaping the look and feel. Do you ever do custom work?" I didn't know it then, but that email would change everything. I took the job. Quietly. Secretly at first. Rachel and I worked together like we were building something sacred. Late-night calls, mood boards, taglines that felt like poetry. She was kind and fierce, and believed in every strange idea I pitched. Meanwhile, Evan grew more distant. He started, working later, traveling more. When he was home, he was critical. My hair was too messy. The apartment was dusty. I'd forgotten how to dress like a woman. I swallowed it all, kept the peace, and buried myself deeper into work that made me feel real. There were signs I ignored, credit card charges I didn't recognize, texts he wouldn't explain, emotional absences disguised as exhaustion. But I told myself he was just stressed, that I was asking too much, that maybe if I just tried harder, he'd see me again. Looking back now, I don't know what breaks my heart more, the way he dismissed me, or the way I let him. My wedding ring had become more of a habit than a symbol. I caught myself twisting it when I was anxious, the way someone might stroke the edge of a scar. There was a photo on our dresser of us at our wedding. I used to look at it every morning. I stopped one day and never resumed. We looked happy, yes, but I realized I didn't recognize the woman in white. She looked so sure, so hopeful, so unaware. My friends tried to reach me. Sarah, my old college roommate, once said, "Lila, do you even like your life right now?" I laughed it off. Of course, it's just a phase. We're building something. But it wasn't we. It was always him. And I was the scaffolding. Now, sitting here, 6 years later, I wonder when exactly I stopped being the woman with ideas and started becoming the woman behind the desk. The wife who dimmed her own light so her husband wouldn't feel threatened by her glow. But even embers can reignite. And that night, when Rachel called me the genius behind her brand, when the room fell silent and Evan's smirk cracked, I felt it. The smallest spark. The night the last piece of me broke was so ordinary, it still feels surreal. The sky outside was dark and soft, like velvet bruised by stars. Evan was on a business trip in Chicago, or so he said, and I was home, alone, curled in the armchair by the fireplace, half reading and half listening to rain tapping the windows. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "Mom's prescription changed again. I just covered it, but can you send me something this week? It's getting rough." Of course. I didn't even hesitate. I opened my laptop, fingers already typing muscle memory. Hour, joint account login. Evan usually handled transfers, but he'd shown me the password years ago when things still felt like we were sharing a life. It let me in. The account was there. Slim. Expected. A few hundred for groceries. Rent had cleared. Nothing surprising. But something in the corner of the screen blinked. Linked accounts. 2, I clicked. And there it was. Another account. Not mine, not ours, just his name on it. I shouldn't have clicked. But I did. Inside, I found numbers I wasn't meant to see. Transactions like shadows. $2,450 at a 5-star hotel in Napa. $6,700 at a boutique jewelry store in Soho. Dinners, car rentals, flowers from florists I'd never heard of. Then her name. Hidden in an invoice. Emma Chandler. Luxury interior design consultation. My stomach folded inward. I recognized her name. She was the new hire at his firm. The one he said was ambitious but green. I remembered how he spoke of her with this mix of irritation and admiration, like she reminded him of someone he wanted to be close to, but wasn't supposed to touch. But he had. He had touched, and spent, and lied. Not just with his body, but with our life. With my silence, my labor, my unwavering belief that loyalty was enough. I sat at the dining table and stared at the screen for so long, the light dimmed and the computer fell asleep. My fingers were locked around the base of my coffee mug, still warm, still untouched. I looked at the wedding ring on my hand, the same one I'd twirled during long meetings, movie nights, arguments I pretended didn't bruise. A thin, delicate circle, platinum, supposedly eternal. I slid it off, and for the first time, my finger breathed. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't scream or throw plates like women in movies do. I didn't rip up photos or call friends or curse the sky. Instead, I printed the bank statements, stapled them neatly, placed them inside a manila folder, slid it into the drawer, beneath my planner templates. Then I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and packed a small suitcase. Clothes, laptop, journal, a scarf my mother knitted me last winter. I paused in front of the mirror. My reflection looked too still, my eyes too calm. But something in them was different. Not hardened, not shattered. Hollowed out, yes, but clearer than they'd been in years. I reached for the bottle of perfume on the vanity, the one Evan hated. He used to say it smelled too strong, too much like pine and smoke. I wore it anyway that night. I sprayed my wrists, my collarbone, the scarf. The scent clung to me like armor. I didn't sleep. I watched the digital clock change from 1 Dao to 2:10:04 to 3:27. Then I stood, walked to the kitchen, and left a single note on the counter. I know. I locked the door behind me as the sun started bleeding into the horizon. The world outside was still wet with rain. The streets shimmered like glass. I drove for 2 hours. No music, no podcasts, just the low hum of tires on pavement and my breath in my chest. The cabin I'd booked sat by a lake, wrapped in fog and silence. It was small, rustic, the kind of place people escape to when they wanted to be someone else. Or no one at all. The owner, a gentlewoman in her 60s with soft eyes and a thicker braid than I'd ever managed, handed me the keys without a question. "Storm might roll in later," she said, "but you look like someone who can weather it." I nodded. Inside, I sat on the floor and unpacked slowly, one item at a time: my journal, the scarf, my old worn sweater that still smelled faintly like home. The ring. I didn't bring it. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. Not about Evan, not about Emma, not even about the betrayal. I wrote about me, what I had lost, what I had silenced, what I wanted to remember. And somewhere between I don't know who I am without him and maybe I've always known, felt the first tear slip down my cheek, not because I missed him, but because I had missed myself. There's something sacred about starting over, especially when no one's watching. At the lake cabin, in between long walks and sleepless nights, I quietly rebuilt. First, it was my website, then a new logo. I changed the name of my shop to Ember and Method. It felt right, something that had survived the burn, but came back with structure. On the surface, it looked like a design studio, but in truth, it was a declaration. I poured myself into work, deeper than I ever had before. I didn't overthink, didn't second guess. My style got bolder, my voice more direct. I wasn't designing for clients anymore. I was designing for women like me, women who had disappeared behind someone else's spotlight and were ready to walk back into their own. And then it happened. The snowball. One of my downloadable templates went viral on Instagram. Something about the way I phrased, "Own your narrative, not your calendar." A productivity influencer shared it, then another. Then a newsletter picked it up. Sales doubled, then tripled. I woke up one morning to a dozen collaboration requests in my inbox. Then came the email from Cartwright and Bloom. It was short, professional, and direct. We're launching a female-forward campaign focused on quiet ambition and reinvention. Your design philosophy aligns perfectly. Would you be open to a conversation about creative direction? I froze. Cartwright. I knew that name. I had heard it at that dinner table months ago. Evan had mentioned they were the one account he had to land. The firm was exploding. Female-owned, female-led. The CEO, Rachel Cartwright, had become the kind of name whispered in boardrooms and printed on the covers of Forbes. We scheduled a Zoom. I showered early that morning, wrapped in a towel, watching my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked different. There were fine lines now, stress lines, smile lines. But I wasn't hiding behind my hair or a husband's shadow anymore. I cut it short last week, just above the shoulders. It made me feel exposed. And free. I wore a soft, black turtleneck and gold hoops. No makeup. Just the scent of my old perfume, pine and smoke on my wrists. The one Evan never liked. The one that now reminded me I survived. Rachel appeared on screen in a tailored navy blazer with a warm, no-nonsense expression. Her background was a minimalist office with pale wood shelves and framed photos of women's protests and design exhibitions. "I've been following your work," she said, folding her hands. "Your voice is consistent, unapologetic, and beautifully subtle. We don't need loud to be powerful. You understand that." "Thank you," I said, breath catching in my throat. She didn't waste time. "Our next campaign needs a lead creative who gets quiet power. It's aimed at women who are rebuilding, not because they want attention, but because they want their damn lives back." I sat straighter. Then she added casually, "We're positioning this to rival the rebrand your husband's agency just pitched us. Full disclosure, I turned them down. I've seen the work. It's good. But it doesn't speak to me. You do." The silence that followed was intentional. She was testing me. I hesitated. Just for a second. And then I smiled. "I'm in." The next 3 months were the most electric of my life. I moved into a downtown studio loft. High ceilings, white walls. The kind of space that made you feel taller just by walking into it. I thrifted a velvet couch, hung sheer curtains that blew like ghost wings when the windows were open, and taped my grandmother's old photos on the wall beside my campaign. Drafts. I worked long hours, sketched until my fingers ached. Every font choice, every brushstroke felt like a piece of me returning to life. And the team at Cartwright and Bloom treated me like an equal. No one questioned my title. No one asked if I had a husband behind the scenes. No one cared about my ring finger. I watched my name rise. On interviews, design panels, podcast intros. People stopped calling me a side hustler and started calling me a strategist. A voice. A force. And Evan? Well, I didn't think about him much. But I heard things. Whispers from mutual acquaintances. LinkedIn updates. His firm was scrambling. The Cartwright contract had been a major loss. He'd been passed over for a promotion. There were rumors that his team culture wasn't holding up under pressure. One evening, I got a message from an old colleague of his. "You and Cartwright?" Didn't see that coming. Evan didn't either. He's not thrilled. I read it and deleted it. This wasn't about him. Not anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I would catch my reflection in the tall studio windows, just a silhouette in soft lamplight, hunched over a screen, and I would feel it again. That quiet, persistent pulse. You did this. On your own. Our campaign launched in late spring. We titled it Her Season, a tribute to women who bloom after being burned. The visuals were earthy, raw, elegant. We featured women with crow's feet, and tattoos with stretch marks and designer heels. We didn't tell them to smile. We told them to stand. We rented a gallery for the launch, a private art space with industrial beams and ivy-covered brick. My work was projected across the walls like sacred murals. The room hummed with energy. Candlelight, velvet couches, wine glasses, a playlist made for women who had walked through fire and came back glowing. At the center of the gallery stood one piece I hadn't shown anyone until now, a large print of a faceless woman standing on a mountaintop at dusk, holding a torn calendar in one hand and a lit match in the other. Beneath it, the caption, "She didn't start over. She started as herself." People stopped and stared. I stood in a corner, sipping wine, wearing a crimson wrap dress with sleeves that fluttered. Like wings, my wedding ring was long gone. My perfume filled the air like quiet thunder. And then, I saw him. Evan. He stood near the back, near the entry arch. Alone. His suit looked more expensive than usual, but his posture had changed. Less sure. He stared at the mountaintop image like he couldn't place the artist, even though every inch of it was stitched with me. He started walking toward me, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch. The gallery pulsed with a soft, steady hum, voices mingling beneath the breath of cello music playing somewhere unseen. Dim lights glowed over white walls, each canvas and digital installation breathing its own story. The room smelled faintly of lavender and ink, new leather and possibility. This was my show, my vision, my voice, my resurrection. The centerpiece of the gallery stood beneath a single spotlight, a tall canvas titled, "She Stayed Too Long." A woman stood alone in the painting, her figure abstract, her silhouette made of torn calendar pages, gold leaf veins, and ink-sketched maps. Her face was unfinished, her hands open. In one palm, she held a match. In the other, a compass. Guests paused, read the plaque, whispered. She stayed too long in a life that silenced her. But even silence leaves echoes, and echoes can become hymns. It wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who had folded herself small, smiled when she wanted to scream, handed over her dreams like sacrificial offerings. It was a story of undoing and rebuilding. And then I felt it, that shift in air, the quiet warning that something was coming. I turned. Evan stood near the champagne bar, half shadowed by a sculpture. He looked older somehow. The expensive suit couldn't hide it. His posture was tighter, his jaw clenched. I hadn't seen him since I left. Not in person. He spotted me and started walking, slowly, deliberately, like he still thought he had the right to occupy my time. "Lila," he said, as if saying it softer would erase what he'd done. I didn't move. I just met his eyes. He stopped 2 feet from me, closer than I wanted, not close enough to matter. "This is impressive," he said, gesturing vaguely at the gallery. "I didn't realize you were this serious." I blinked, just once. Then, "I was always serious. You just preferred me small." He flinched. Subtle, but I caught it. He looked around like he wanted a more private corner. "Can we talk?" "I don't think we need to," I said. "Everything I had to say is already on the walls." His brow twitched. "So this is, what, payback?" I laughed. Soft, sad, almost tender. "No, Evan. This is art. You always confused visibility with vengeance." He shifted his weight, like he couldn't find balance. "I made mistakes." "Yes," I said, voice steady. "You did. I didn't think you'd actually leave." That stung more than I expected. Not because I wanted him to believe in me, but because it confirmed what I always suspected. He didn't. "I know," I said, lifting my chin. That's why I had to. A soft chime rang overhead. The gallery assistant signaling the keynote was about to begin. I have to speak, I told him, turning slightly. He hesitated. Layla. I paused. I used to wish you'd say something that would make me stay, I said. Now I hope you say something that makes you change. He didn't reply. Just stood there, watching me walk away, like I was a painting he finally understood too late. The podium lights were warm on my face. The audience hushed as I stepped up. Colleagues, artists, clients, strangers. I didn't use a script. I didn't need one. I was married to a man who told me I was a hobby, I began, voice even, unshaken. A side project, a placeholder, until something real came along. So I made my life real, not to prove him wrong, but to remember I was never meant to be small. Scattered nods, a few soft gasps. I stayed too long in a version of myself that didn't belong to me. I wore the perfume he liked, spoke in ways that didn't scare him, shrank my dreams until they could fit beside his. I looked out into the crowd. I didn't search for Evan. I searched for every woman holding her breath in her chest. But this work, this gallery, this isn't revenge. It's restoration. I'm not here to burn bridges. I'm here to build my own city. Applause. Not wild, not chaotic, just long and knowing, like applause that came from the spine, not the hands. Later I stood under the awning just outside the gallery. It had started to rain, soft, steady. I held a glass of red wine in one hand, and my heels dangled from the other. My feet ached. My heart did not. The wedding ring sat inside a small velvet pouch tucked in my purse. I hadn't worn it in months, but tonight I'd brought it, for closure. I planned to mail it back, not out of spite, but to let it go. Like a receipt from a life I no longer claimed. The CEO of Cartwright & Bloom joined me outside. She leaned against the wall beside me, umbrella in hand. They're already asking about your next campaign, she said with a smile. I figured, I replied, grinning. She paused. You don't need to say yes right away. Just take a minute. Breathe. I nodded. I will. But I think I'm just getting started. And I meant it. The rain kissed my skin. The city hummed. Somewhere behind me, my name was still echoing off gallery walls. And somewhere inside me, a woman who had once folded herself away into shadows had finally stepped fully into the light, not to be admired, not to be feared, but to be seen.